Inflation and high gas prices remain the top concern of Americans today. According to the July Economist YouGov poll, 88% of respondents said inflation is a serious problem facing the country, with 64% saying it's a very serious problem.
A June Rasmussen poll found that 91% of voters who said the inflation was a very important midterm issue, compared to 57% who said the same of the January 6th hearings.
Union Railroad worker and Newsweek contributor Charles Stallworth brought up this point in his recent piece, where he also spoke with 100 blue-collar workers about their top concerns, and he's here to expand on all of this. Welcome to you, Charles.
How you doing? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we're happy to have you. So what is the top concern of the people you speak with?
Well, the top concern is definitely fuel cost and inflation. That's the biggest thing. Of course, is the fuel costs and things like that, because a lot of these people definitely have hobbies and all kinds of things that they like to do on the weekends and that are definitely affected by fuel cost, for sure, and the cost of inflation as well.
And Charles, I love that you did this, and you lay it out in your Newsweek article where you talk about how you decided to just survey more than 100 of your kind of coworkers and colleagues and ask them, hey, what are your top 3 political issues that you care about in this election? What gave you the idea to do that? And when you were going into it, were you surprised at all from the responses?
Really, to be honest with you, I wasn't surprised with the responses, because it was kind of it's like an undercurrent that you can tell that people were really upset about these things. But also, I don't really see, as far as in Congress or in any levels of government, any blue collar workers at all. I mean, I know we talk about things like race, sex, and things like that when it comes to representation, but one of the people that are not, or one class that's not represented, is blue collar workers.
Yeah, that's certainly a criticism right now being aimed at both parties, but I think especially the Democratic Party, which historically has been the party of a lot of members of this group, of a lot of blue-collar workers, and now has the perception, at least, of being focused. I mean, this is the criticism of the party, is that it's overly focused on identity issues rather than economic issues, some other things, and that because of that, it is losing ground with these voters at a time the Republican Party is doing better and better with them. That's certainly, I think it's inarguable, that's the perception among a lot of people who are starting to pay more attention to this. Is that the perception of the people who work in your industry, the people you're talking to as well? Is that accurately how they feel?
I can tell you this: I'm a little bit more a person that digs into politics a lot more. It's a hobby for me, and I feel that a lot of these blue collar workers, they're actually thinking that the Republican Party is a party that's for the working, or starting to become more for the working class. But let's be honest, the Republican Party is just as giving billions of dollars, or signing up to give $1 billion to Ukraine, and a lot of these other issues that, to be honest with you, they're just as complicit as the Democrat Party these days.
And so, what was the gender breakdown of folks that you talked to? And I'm curious, when it comes to that perception among working class people that Republicans are starting to become more of a working class party, I'm curious when you started noticing that happen, and what kind of gender breakdown you see in that, whether you're talking to men or women on that question.
When it comes to gender breakdown, of course, when it comes to the railroad, let's be fair, it's going to be is overly male. There were 4 ladies I talked to. One lady was actually honestly a lady that was living out of her car that works for McDonald's, and and as sad as that was, I'm thinking to myself, well, here she is living out of her vehicle, out of an older Suburban, so I asked her what she thinks, right. And it's to tell her, well, you know what, this $4 a gallon is totally worth it, for something like when it comes to Ukraine or just any kind of green energy policies and things like that. it's hard for these people to swallow. It really is. And so it was, I know 4 total women, 3 actually work on the railroad as engineers.
And so most of your sample, but you talk to a lot of working class women too, and I'm curious if your sense, because my sense seems to be that it's more common among men over the last several years to start seeing the Republican Party as more of a working class party than it is among working class women. I'm curious if that's been your experience too.
Yeah, it seems like that is the case. I know I saw something on Twitter yesterday that was saying that in Georgia, 25% of black men have actually started moving towards the Republican Party as well, and it does seem to be that you're seeing more the more of women actually going towards the the left or the Democrat Party. But to be honest with you, when it came to this blue collar women, they were lining up more as far as the Republican Party goes. That is what that's just what it is.
Right, and you mentioned the money we're giving to help with Ukraine, and you're right that it's largely a bipartisan effort. Although to the extent there is any opposition in Congress to it, it's almost universally coming from Republicans. It's just a minority of Republicans, most Republicans on board. But then the administration, it's Biden in charge, and is sticking to this very as long as it takes. That was the literal quote last week from the State Department, I believe. As long as it takes in this war, which could be forever, this huge commitment to spending more money, maybe an unlimited amount of money, on this effort at a time when Americans are really hurting, and in fact that keeping this war going is one of the factors leading to the domestic punishment and pain and suffering. How do you think working class people, the kind of people you're talking to, are feeling about that, about the administration saying, hey, we're going to do this as long as it takes because that's what our priority is, Ukraine?
I can tell you this, I don't really know a better term to use. I call it when it comes to blue collar workers, it's more of the boiled down economy. When you boil everything down, most people are worried about shelter, healthcare, and food and water. They're worried about the basic necessities of life, right? And when none of those things are guaranteed, you're only worried about people. Even when it comes to something like immigration, I started to dig in, and most of these people were saying, legal immigration, I'm fine with that, And when it comes to when you already have these things guaranteed for you, you can worry about the first world problems, so to speak. You can worry about those things because, hey, that you're not going to miss anything. You're not going to miss a check. You're not going to miss a meal or anything else. Or you don't have to put something aside just to put food in your truck. I mean, a sedan, $87 to fill up is absolutely insane. Just a regular, and so to have that. When you're saying, hey, I tell you what, all of this Ukraine thing and all that is just totally worth it for you to have to choose between the two is just people can't swallow it. It's just not good.
And you mentioned that, and we got to run in a second, but real quickly, you mentioned that the number 2 thing that people generally said was crime, and then the number 3 it was a little bit more scattered. I'm curious on number 2, what did people think about the origin of crime and what ought to be done about it, and were they blaming more one party or another more? You mentioned in your piece that progressive DAs, but I'm curious, did that come up, or what was the kind of takeaway?
The main thing that I see as far as crime goes, and it can be different in different cities, but in Houston, one of the things you're seeing when it comes to something like gentrification, when it comes to a lot of of these people moving downtown, going into the Third Ward, Houston, that's historically, just a pretty rough area. But now you're starting to see the high rises and things like that. Third Ward, Fifth Ward, Fourth Ward. Now that all of these people are moving in, and it's pretty much just been almost completely gentrified. What you're seeing now is these bad elements that were in the city, they're moving out to the suburbs, and a lot of these people that work at the railroad, it's mostly, to be honest, suburban and suburban/rural and just straight up rural. And now you're having to, now that they're building all this affordable housing, and now that you have these criminal elements out there in the suburbs, now these people are railroad workers and different people of different professions, they're having to move even further out, which means that they have to drive even further to actually get to their job down there in the city.
Wow. Fascinating stuff. Charles, thanks so much for sharing your insights you gleaned from your coworkers.
Once again, thanks for having me.
You got it. Stick around and we'll have more Rising right after this.